Jametta.
Plug in the old camera.
Sorry?
Got to plug in the camera.
Oh, that camera. Yeah.
And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. Well, on today's program, we're going to have an interview with Dr. Dan Young. Dr. Young is a naturopath, and we've been trying to get him on the show for quite some time, but it just so happened we were able to do that this morning. So at the bottom of the hour, we're going to talk to the good doctor, and he's got some thoughts about some legislation that's been proposed by Representative Darren McCann. Now, if you'll remember, we had Representative McCann on, it was probably like last month or something. And he was talking about a bill for this upcoming legislative session to where he might try to regulate some sort of some things that naturopaths do. I don't know a lot about it, and so I thought that we would talk to a naturopathic doctor. And so we're going to do that at the bottom of the hour. But before we begin there, now, Agent 29, have you seen the Hunter Biden interview?
I saw it, but I didn't listen much.
Well, you didn't. You would have learned a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, he's got an encyclopedic knowledge of crack.
Of just about everything bad.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you know this or not, but apparently crack cocaine is better for you than alcohol. And, it's pure. And so really, it's safe. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Well, weed users use the same argument. Pretty much anybody on any other drug tries to compare it to alcohol.
Yeah. Well, take a look at this.
Between crack cocaine and cocaine is sodium bicarbonate and water and heat, literally.
That's the only difference.
And those things are pretty much free if you go to a science store.
This is free.
And look at the guy who's doing
you
the
can
interview.
go to your neighborhood convenience store and just get. Anyway, I don't want to tell people how to make crack cocaine, but it literally is a mayonnaise jar, cocaine, and baking soda.
How different is the experience?
Does crack cocaine make you act any differently? No.
No.
Is it
it's
safer
fine.
than alcohol? Probably. People think of crack as being dirty. It's the exact opposite. When you make crack, what you're doing is you're burning off all the impurities so that it combines with the sodium bicarbonate, which makes it smokable. That's
we're
all.
burning off the impurities. It's probably safer than alcohol. No, I don't want to say that alcohol is a safe thing to drink in excess. Nothing in excess is good for you, but absolutely incredible. Now that interview is about 3 hours long, and no, I didn't watch all of it. I was listening to the radio yesterday, and Sean Hannity was playing different parts of it, and it is absolutely amazing the lack of self-awareness. In the video, he actually claims that, oh yeah, I had all of the experience necessary to sit on the board of Burisma. And I mean, and it would be really difficult to play parts of it because he dropped so many F-bombs, but absolutely incredible. Your little educational note for today, Ken. Apparently, instead of drinking beer, you should smoke crack.
I've been wasting my time all up to here, Just go right to crack.
Oh, incredible. But we begin this morning with the turkey vulture. Federal judge dismisses voting lawsuit against Secretary of State Chuck Gray. Now, this one, I knew this was going to happen, but there was a lawsuit filed by the Equality State Policy Center and Mark Elias against Chuck Gray and the Secretary of State over the election bill that was passed in the last legislative session, that you have to prove you're a resident before you can vote in the state. And a judge threw that out yesterday. And I quote, "A U.S. district judge has dismissed a lawsuit alleging that the enforcement of a new Wyoming election law is unconstitutional. The law, passed by the Wyoming legislature earlier this year as House Bill 156, and was Secretary of State Chuck Gray's top priority to get through the state's governing body. As of July 1st, the law requires Wyoming voters to be state residents for at least 30 days before casting their ballots. They must present proof of residency and American citizenship when registering to vote. Filed by the Equality State Policy Center, the lawsuit alleges that House Bill 156 causes an undue burden on the right to vote, particularly for women, as well as Hispanic, young and low-income voters, and is unconstitutionally vague as written. Now, there are several other states that have residency requirements before you can vote. When I lived in Virginia, you had to live there for a year before you could register to vote, which is interesting because Democrats are pretty much in charge of that entire state. At least they are now. But a lot of different states have residency requirements before you can vote in their elections. And that you have to be a U.S. citizen, well, that just makes perfect sense to me. But the Equality State Policy Center and Mark Elias filed a lawsuit against Wyoming, and a judge has thrown that out. And the judge's name was Scott Skavdal. And there's some interesting legalese here, but I'm going to read it to you just so you can hear what the judge was thinking. Quote, Skavdal chose to treat the motion to dismiss the case filed by Gray as a factual challenge rather than a facial challenge. A factual challenge argues that a law is unconstitutional as applied to the specific facts of a particular case or situation, while a facial challenge argues that the law is unconstitutional in all of its applications or on its face, which meaning it is inherently flawed and can't be applied in any constitutional way. Under the factual challenge, the plaintiff, the Equality State Policy Center in this case, must prove that it is suing in its own or a representational capacity. And the problem with them, according to the judge in the case, that the lawsuit couldn't prove that the Equality State Policy Center or any of the people that they were representing were being harmed. And that's, we hear a lot about lawsuits. Lord knows there's been enough filed against the Trump administration. But in any lawsuit, you've got to prove that you were being harmed in some way, shape, or form. And in this case, in the judge's ruling, it says that the Equality State Policy Center couldn't prove that they or anybody else they were representing had their voting rights diminished in any way, shape, or form. So it was thrown out. Now, a bit about the Equality State Policy Center. It is a collection, a coalition, I guess you could call it, of just about every far-left group in Wyoming that you could think of. Its executive director is a guy named Ron Sniffen. Ron Sniffen, or excuse me, he's not the executive director. He's the treasurer of the Equality State Policy Center. That's important, and I'll tell you why here in just a second. But he's also the executive director of the Wyoming Education Association. So The guy running the helping run the Equality State Policy Center is the head guy at the WEA. Now, as the treasurer, Ron Sniffen would know exactly where they get a lot of their money, and the policy center is funded largely by labor unions. And the two in particular, AFL-CIO and this really weird one called the Brotherhood of Maintenance Workers' Rights of Way. They get most of their funding from people like the Tides Foundation and the Center for American Progress, way far left groups in America that ultimately, like the Tides Foundation, its major donor is George Soros and Alex Soros. So, if you ever have any question that any of these really nefarious people are operating in Wyoming, all you got to do is look right at the Equality State Policy Center, and you'll find the same sort of nefarious characters that you hear operating in other parts of the country. Wyoming is not immune in this regard. And, it just so happens that they kind of fly a little bit lower below the radar in Wyoming because we're, such a more conservative state than others. And I still wouldn't argue that the legislature in Wyoming, or in fact, even the political makeup of Wyoming is, overwhelmingly conservative. In fact, I would say that it's probably somewhere around 60% conservative, 40% liberal or Democrat. But anyway, in the voting rights or the voting lawsuit has been thrown out of court, and I think that this is a tremendous event. So, question for you, Agent 29, since you were there, right in the middle of all of this stuff, talk to me about House Bill 156. I mean, was that the top priority of the Secretary of State's office, or was that your top priority with the Freedom Caucus, or what was going on there?
It was part of the Five and Dime talking about voter integrity. But to me, it was stating the obvious, as you kind of started out with. Yeah, you have to be a citizen to vote. That's what being a citizen means.
I would think so, yeah.
And it was another one of those bills where a lot of bills come up and you think, why do we even have to run this? A lot of them, Second Amendment type bills. It's already enshrined in the Constitution. We shouldn't need to go any farther. But this one was kind of a watermark bill. It basically just established how we're going to look at the Constitution, how we're going to look at citizenship, where the limits of voter rights are, I guess. And another one that was kind of interesting was we don't recognize identification from other states given to illegal aliens.
Yeah, and there's a piece in Wildfile
yes.
this morning about it.
Their take on it was they want Wyoming law enforcement to act like ICE. I think it just shows a lot about where the mindset is for various people. So it looks like you're going to try to pull that up.
Yeah, here, go ahead and throw my screen up on there. Oh, there we go. New Wyoming law asks law enforcement to act like ICE, generating concern over constitutional violations. And later on in today's program, I've got a video of Senator John Kennedy talking about the headlines from NPR. Well, there's really no difference in the headlines between this one and what Senator Kennedy is going to talk about. But what they're referring to in the piece is House Bill 156. They're trying to get law enforcement to act like ICE. Well, the truth is, and, Agent 29, you were, instrumental in getting that law passed. But and correct me if I'm wrong here, you know the specifics better than I do. But in the end, the law says that driver's licenses will say not a U.S. citizen on the back. Why they couldn't put it on the front, I guess there's a formatting problem. It seems stupid to me, but there was a whole controversy around the color, the type. That it was going to cost $1 jillion to do it. What happened there?
Well, if you happen to have a concealed carry permit and you look at your driver's license and your concealed carry permit, you'll note that there's a little logo up in the upper left-hand corner, and the logo's a different color. And what I was trying to do was to get something put on the front so that when somebody goes to vote, they hold the card out. And if you're sitting there as an election judge and person after person goes by and they show you the same ID and it looks the same, and all of a sudden one comes up that's orange instead of blue or green, it jumps out at you. Well, what's that about? Well, they sent up the
Why not?
the
Right?
powers that be, yeah, and apparently it was going to cost like $250,000 to be able to reformat the whole thing so that they could do that, and
I
there
don't know,
wasn't,
man. I'm pretty good with Photoshop, and it
yeah,
doesn't cost $250,000
there
to
wasn't
change stuff.
room. There wasn't room on the front of the thing, so they had to put it on the back. And then they wanted to put not U.S., and we're saying no, we want not a U.S. citizen. We don't, no question whatsoever. And it was a difficult, long slug. We finally ended up,
Now hold
yeah,
on, just a second. So, who was fighting you on that? Was it the Democrats, or because I mean, we hear that the Democrats are the ones that are totally in
no,
the tank for illegal immigrants.
the Democrats had very little to say. It was the agencies involved, and it was the rhinos that were backing the agencies in their claims. The agency would come up and say, it costs $250,000 to do this. And I'd say, we didn't hear that argument when we started with the concealed carry permits. What's the problem? Well, it is the way that it is. And it went back and forth and back and forth. It finally came down to uh, they put the Senate and the House together, and we had to try to decide how we're going to compromise. So we got it out where it is on the back, but I think it says not a citizen now, if I remember. It went through so many versions that it's hard.
Well,
to
and here's the
decide.
problem with that. So you're an election judge, and every time I've gone to vote, and even in Sheridan, Johnson County, doesn't matter. You walk in, and there's somebody that greets you, right? And they check your name off, and they check your ID. Well, in a busy precinct, you might see, a couple of thousand people a day, and so they hand you their ID. You look at it. Yep, okay, check it off. What's the likelihood that they're going to flip it over?
I would say at this point the likelihood is pretty good because we made a lot of noise about we're just going to have to train these judges to do that, to flip it over and look at it. How many people it will actually catch? I want to say there's about 4,000. I don't remember the numbers for sure. At one point, Secretary of State had given me the numbers, and it's interesting that some of them, there are a lot that can fly under the radar in the state of Wyoming the way that it was. And we did fix that. It's just a matter of, do we comply? Do we train our judges to what
Now
they're
I
doing?
will say that when the lovely Christine and I went to Jackson the last time, which by the way we had a fabulous time, and I later on I'll tell you. I mean, you may have seen a social media post that I put up how I had a speaking invitation there, and I'll talk about that um, at a later time. But our first time during our honeymoon last year, we saw a huge amount of immigrants. I mean, I was shocked at how many different people, immigrants, were there in Jackson. And when you think of illegal immigrant, you think Mexican, Hispanic, coming across the southern border. And I'm not saying that everybody we ran into was an illegal alien, but there were a lot of Eastern European there, lots of people of Russian descent. I was even pretty sure that I found a Russian gangster. We we went walking by this restaurant, and somebody had said, "Hey, you really need to go check out this restaurant." And Christine and I walked by, and it was jam packed. I mean, there was no way we were going to get a table. Sitting at the bar was this obvious Russian guy, and big, huge, muscled out. He had the
I've
tight.
seen him.
Yeah,
I've seen him. I introduced myself. He said his name was Boris Sanovich.
yeah. But he even had he had the big pinky ring on, and I mean just your stereotypic TV movie mobster looking guy. Now, when we compared that to our most recent trip there, which was only 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I guess, we didn't see near the amount of immigrants in Jackson. I don't know that that was the reason why. But I'm just telling you that it just felt there was a palpable feeling that the population had gone down.
Could have been something as simple as just there were a couple of tour buses in town at the time, and you notice a lot of.
Actually, most of the ones we saw were working there,
Yeah.
restaurant type workers, wait staff.
Well, I kind of was laughing to myself when you said you went there on your honeymoon. Do you know that when I went on my honeymoon, we also went through there?
Yeah, in a covered wagon.
No, I say Jackson was still part of Wyoming then.
Oh, okay, all right. So here's the reason why I bring all this up. And you and I kind of had a go around during the legislative session about this because I said, hey, I don't see any reason why we need to have valid IDs for illegal aliens anyway. And there's actually, correctly pointed out to me that there is a very good reason that there are folks that live in Wyoming and in the United States that are here legally, but they're not citizens. And so they have driver's licenses, and you might be here on business or a
Yeah,
vacation or something, but you're here legally and you need a driver's license.
those are the people that I was talking about when I was trying to pull the numbers, and I wish I could remember them. Um, they they can get a driver's license, but there's something on there. But then there's another class of people, and I'm sorry I don't remember the details. There's another class of people where there's no notice necessary. So we fixed that, and I think that was a very good thing. I should state, just for the record, my middle son's first wife. Um, he met her in Du Bois. She was over here on a work visa, and she went through, I think it took 3 or 4 years to get her citizenship. It cost a substantial amount of money. It was a large task. And the idea of granting amnesty or just
It's
ignoring
offensive.
just ignoring it altogether is highly offensive to those of us who went through the process to do it right and to follow the law. So I would say, yeah, maybe some of these immigration laws need to be loosened up a little bit and make it a little simpler. But you don't, as we said yesterday, you don't simply just ignore the law.
I've actually got my grandfather's immigration documents, and two things. First, the citizenship certificate is amazing. It is so cool. I mean, it's about this big and about like this. I mean, it's a huge piece of paper, really ornate, a cool piece of paper. But the second thing is, I also have a copy of, I guess it was a practice test that my grandfather had to study so he could take his citizenship test. And I'm telling you what, Ken, you and I would have trouble passing it.
It's still a pretty good process. I every year in Sheridan County they have a naturalization ceremony. Judge
I'd
Darcy
like to go to
Phillips,
that.
yeah, Judge Darcy Phillips did one last time, and the wife of one of my partners, who was originally from England, became a naturalized citizen. And it's actually very emotional. There were probably 35 people that became, and there was hardly a dry eye in the place when it was over. And that is something that is, citizenship should mean something. And when the rights don't matter, if you can illegally come into the country and get all sorts of benefits, your kids get free school, you get welfare benefits, all those other things. That's just that's messed up.
One of my favorite days during the legislative session, and I don't know if they did it this past session, but it's when they have a naturalization ceremony. And the coolest thing, I think, is sitting in the gallery and watching the group of people who just became U.S. citizens come and visit the House or the Senate. And most of the time, all of them are holding a little American flag, and you can just look in their eyes, and they're so happy. And I mean, it's a really, really cool thing to see. But let's go ahead and I just want to read you a little bit of the Wildpile article about this. So I read you the headline. New Wyoming law asks law enforcement to act like ICE, generating concern over constitutional violations. And the subheadline says, the state no longer recognizes licenses from other states issued to undocumented immigrants, attorneys, Mexican diplomats worried about the new law as deportations increase. One county worries enforcement will bring lawsuits. Okay, so a lot of this is, hyperbolic leftist worrying. Now, if you are in the country illegally, that is, you crossed the southern border or you crossed the northern border. A lot of people don't realize there was a lot of illegal immigration from the northern border. But if you're in the country illegally, you don't have the right to vote. Technically, you should not be able to get a job. You don't pay taxes. You shouldn't receive any of those services that citizens receive. And there should be no reason why you have a valid driver's license. And so the law that was passed clarifies that Wyoming doesn't recognize your driver's license if you are an illegal alien.
Another aspect to this that came up even here in Wyoming was, well, you guys are just racist. You don't like brown people. absolutely offensive that somebody would say that had nothing to do with race. We have people coming from all different countries, all different backgrounds, all different races, and the U.S. is the melting pot. But the idea is that we all come in, we become citizens, and we become one that way. E pluribus unum, like we said. This was the opposite of that. As we all know, people coming in, we have no idea who they are, where they're from, what sort of background, coming in from both borders, from countries that hate us and that seek to do us ill. And to me, it was just absolutely a no-brainer.
Well, and I think for most people, it's probably a no-brainer for them too. And all you have to do is really think about it a little bit, and it just makes sense, right? Why should we issue documentation to people who are in our country illegally? The very first thing we should do is arrest them and deport them. And I mean, that's not asking much of law enforcement, because I mean, their job is to enforce the law. And if you're not a legal citizen, but let me just read you the first couple of paragraphs, because this is classic wild-pile BS. And I quote, "The Laramie County Sheriff's Office, one of the state's larger police agencies, is advising deputies to limit enforcement of Wyoming's new law invalidating driver's licenses some states issue to undocumented immigrants." So you have a law enforcement agency that's already saying, we're not going to enforce the law. County attorneys who reviewed the new law warned the department it would be difficult for deputies to enforce without violating people's constitutional rights. Well, if you're an illegal alien, you don't have any constitutional rights. The only people that have constitutional rights are citizens. And I mean, it just blows my mind that there are people in this country that think that just because by virtue of you being here, you have constitutional rights. I mean, that's just geography. That doesn't have anything to do with your status, legal or otherwise. Quote, "The last thing anyone wants is expensive, time-consuming, and potentially embarrassing litigation over these new laws," the guidance reads. In essence, the concern in Laramie County boils down to one raised often by opponents of the law during legislative debate this past winter. Deputies and police officers who are not federal immigration enforcement officers are not well equipped to determine whether a person they pull over on suspicion of a traffic offense or other local infraction is in the country legally or not. That could make traffic stops unconstitutionally long, the guidance warns. Okay, so I don't know when the last time you've been stopped is, but you hand them your driver's license and your insurance and your registration. It doesn't take the cop very long to pull up all of the information about you. And if there is a problem with your license, it's suspended or you have a ticket or, you have a warrant, it doesn't take that long at all for them to figure it out.
There's also, Wyoming doesn't issue driver's licenses to illegal aliens. So if somebody hands you a Wyoming driver's license, you can figure they're probably a citizen.
There you go.
Probably.
I mean, ding, ding, ding. What do we have for them, Bob? I mean, it's just absolutely bizarre. And I am embarrassed that we have law enforcement agencies in Wyoming that are openly telling their officers not to enforce the law. I mean, it really irritates the crap out of me. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll have a conversation with Dr. Dan Young. Back in a minute. Never know why. Everybody sing. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely, and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand. You can watch the live program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, and on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. And, it doesn't really take that much to find Cowboy State Politics. You can find it pretty much anywhere you look. If you haven't figured it out yet, just type in Cowboy State Politics and you'll find it. Make sure you share it with all of your friends. And if you want real Wyoming news and you want it the right way and a highest quality program, then you should just watch Cowboy State Politics. Well, joining me on the program is Dr. Dan Young. Dan is a naturopath down in Cheyenne, right, Dan?
That's correct. Good morning, David. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we could finally hook this up and have you on. The way I always start out every interview is, why don't you just tell my audience a little bit about yourself?
Glad to. Thanks for the opportunity. In 1974, my grandfather had Parkinson's, shook real bad in his right hand, was not responding well to the modern approach to care. My father witnessed this and decided to start studying into alternative natural therapies, things that were non-invasive, non-toxic. And he had what I originally referred to as the original family practice in Montana from 74 to 98. He practiced on me and mom and my brother and sister and everybody that he could in terms of using these natural therapies, and finally formalized the business in 1998 in Torrington, of all places.
Okay.
And a couple of years later, moved here into Cheyenne, and we've been running a family practice now. I joined in November 1st of 2001, and we've been here ever since, serving the community in the surrounding area.
Great. Well, could you define for me exactly what a naturopathic doctor is? I'm sure a lot of people have heard the term. Maybe they know somebody that practices, natural healing. But I don't know that they know all that much. So, is a naturopathic doctor an MD? Do you have certifications? Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's great questions. And these are questions that really need to be clarified, especially with the current legislative actions that are trying to be taking place here in Wyoming for our consumers. The doctor of naturopathy or doctor of naturopathy really goes back to a quintessential meaning, okay? A lot of times there's questions about education, background, schooling, that type of thing. And these are all legitimate things to be looked at. But a doctor of naturopathy in its quintessential meaning is a teacher of natural therapies or a teacher of natural philosophy. And that's where the original intent, the original meaning, the original projection to the community was laid, the foundation for that. And what's happened, it seems, in recent years, is that there has been a real strong push nationally on a state-by-state level to try to blend naturopathy with modern medical practices. And they both have their place. They both are important. They both are needed, clearly, by people here in the communities. But the challenge is is that when you try to medicalize natural therapies, you can run into some real problems, some real clarity issues, a lot of confusion created in the minds of consumers. What are they actually embracing, and what are they being exposed to?
Okay, so one big question I have about this is, and let me back up a little bit. My wife is a cosmetologist and hairstylist. She does a lot of hair color, hair cutting, and she's absolutely in favor of some regulation of cosmetology. And the reason for that is she deals with some pretty harsh chemicals. At any given time in her salon, she's got some razor sharp shears in her hands. So if you don't know what you're doing, you could seriously injure somebody, give them a chemical haircut, permanently remove their hair. So there's a lot of different things that are going on. And
Sure.
And she always says, you have to have some regulation. Like, she absolutely thinks that cosmetologists should be licensed. So in what you do, and I don't know, maybe you already answered this question, but so do you have a like a medical doctor's license, or is this just something that you just learned and that you don't necessarily have to have a degree for?
It's a great question. My background is not only just from my family history and actual hands-on experience, my board certification nationally, so I am board certified nationally. Okay. And that board certification requires ongoing education. Obviously, me as the practitioner, I get to choose that education, but it has to be in the form of approved continuing education hours. And one of the things that I also have that I think is really paramount to our industry anyways, that most people don't have the luxury of, is standing in exam rooms, working with people hands-on for over 2.5, almost 3.5 years with a master herbalist who was also my father, learning how to use these substances in a proper manner. Now, to refer to your analogy of a cosmetologist, you said it best. They're already using known toxic substances, using instruments that could actually, if not used properly, could produce harm. It's been our experience in natural health that herbal preparations, when they're in their complete form, already have safeguards built in. There is no real toxic side effect. We don't have to worry about producing an event that might create further harm. We're using natural substances and whole food substances, which have literally stood the test of time for efficacy as well as not producing negative side effects.
And I guess where I'm going with that is, and let me just give you another, I guess, analogy. I'm a diabetic, and there's a lot of different medicines, and I've actually got some pretty serious neuropathy in my lower body. And I mean, there's a couple of ways that you can treat that. I could take some, pretty high powerful opioids, and it gets rid of the pain. Also makes me kind of drool a little bit. Or you could use some more natural methods. And my mom happens to be really big into essential oils. For a while, I called her the witch doctor until she actually, I mean, it kind of fits sometimes. She's always cooking up some sort of potion. But anyway, some of those things actually worked. There's a couple of concoctions she's put together that really do take care of some of the, neuropathy pain that I've got. However, there are some of those that are, in their pure form, they're kind of toxic, that you could easily burn yourself with them. And so you have to dilute them. So my question is, in what you do, I mean, there's got to be some substances that are harmful if taken in, too high of a dose, or, mixed with other things. I mean, in your practice, do you run into those types of things where, hey, you have to know what this substance does and how it interacts with these other forms of medication?
Well, first of all, it's not a medication, okay? It's a natural substance, either herbal or whole food in concentrated form. And yes, give you an example. If you take too much lobelia, here's what can happen.
Now,
you're going to get the sweats.
What is
What's
that? What is that?
What's that?
What is lobelia before you?
Lobelia is an herb, okay? And it's used to balance out the central nervous system. It's also used as a food source to help any other nutritional substances the person's taking to work better in the system. Tends to have antispasmodic properties, anti-seizure properties, these types of things, but from a natural perspective. And when taken too much, you will get the sweats, you will get nauseous, you will vomit, you will have a run to the bathroom, so to speak, and you're not going to feel good for a couple of days. Okay. So those are the type of things that can happen. And I just thank God that we are experienced enough to know how to administer these things. And we monitor these things very closely with our clients from all over the country so that they're using them properly.
All right, so let's talk legislation. And, I did contact Representative McCann, who he's the guy that kind of brought this idea up. And I really don't have a firm grasp on, what he's thinking. Probably by tomorrow he'll have some notes to me so we can talk about what his legislative ideas actually are. But from your understanding, what is he trying to do? How do you think that's going to affect your industry?
As I said before, there seems to be a push to try and medicalize natural therapies. There's already federal law in the books from 1994 that protect the use of natural therapies as long as the individual is not prescribing, dosing, preventing or curing disease. That's already federal law. It's been on the books since 1994. So the need for licensure of this kind is really not going to legitimize natural therapies any more than they already have been, nor is it going to protect them for the consumer or make them more accessible. That seems to be the message that's getting out to the people in Wyoming. And what I've witnessed firsthand and can share with you from the January testimony and from the recent testimony for the interim committee in Casper is that there's over an hour's worth of testimony from practitioners not residing in the state of Wyoming. Apparently there's one or two who are intrigued by the notion of securing naturopathic physician licensing, which is basically a hybrid seeming to join their education that's really medically slanted with natural and then try to get that all under one license. It's at the very least, David, it's going to be extremely problematic. There's no guarantee that insurance companies are going to cover this. And the outcome is going to be that when you start including natural substances that were never designed to be in a prescription model under a licensure, now you're opening a door to a whole slew of things, as I'm sure you can imagine.
So do insurance companies cover the things that you suggest to your clients? I mean, is that something you can submit to your insurance company?
No. Insurance companies at best, what they'll do currently is they will cover the clinical visit, okay, because that's an out-of-pocket professional expense, so basically a copay, okay? And we have had clients over the years who were successful at reimbursement on that. As far as the actual nutritional therapy, the protocol itself, the whole food nutrients or the nutraceuticals or the herbal remedies, those are not classified under insurance billing codes because you have to provide the code for the diagnosis in order to get that covered. And there's no codes that exist for those things. So even if there's a successful push to get some type of legislation to, in my viewpoint, try to legitimize these naturopathic physician positions and their education, there is still no guarantee to the consumer or the practitioner that the insurance companies are ever going to step up and actually cover these things. Now, here's what will happen. The insurance company will say, aha, here's a way to increase insurance premiums by just $5 a month per person. But when you have 100,000 people, that's a lot of nice revenue for the insurance company. And there's no guarantee that that client or that insured will ever be covered or reimbursed for their out-of-pocket expenses. So licensure from a practitioner standpoint is similar to what the chiropractors went through years ago when they started becoming covered by insurance. And when the things turn rough, when things go south, when things get tight financially, the last person who has what I refer to as the chair at the beggar's table with insurance companies, they're the first to be removed. So it doesn't legitimize the industry anymore. It doesn't create any more credibility for licensing for naturopathic physicians. And really, quite honestly, David, with some of the comments that the Representative McCann made on the last interview that you had with him, he talked about that these folks have a medical degree or a medical, or the equivalent thereof, that's the wording he used, equivalent of a medical degree or medical training, then really it only makes sense that they should seek recognition and being recognized by the Wyoming Medical Association and get a medical license that already exists. But to try and marry the two, we all remember the movie Frankenstein, and it didn't turn out so well for the communities when they tried to piece different parts together and try and make it work. So there's really no upside.
Okay, now here's one of the things
biggest concern I have.
Go ahead.
The biggest concern I have, one of many, but the biggest concern is that this last month, the testimony in Casper had over an hour's worth of ongoing testimony from people that don't even live in Wyoming, from Connecticut, from Washington, from Oregon, from California, from Illinois, right? Over an hour's worth of testimony that this committee was subjected to try and convince them that this is a really great deal for the citizens of Wyoming. And obviously it's going to prove itself not to be.
All right. Well, one of the questions that I always have, and anytime, we get on this subject, I think of, folks that make claims about, substances like marijuana. Okay. I know lots of people who claim that marijuana has some sort of medicinal value to it. Well, it's also a federal crime to traffic in it. It's a state crime to possess it. And, we could debate the merits of, whether it should be illegal or not. However, but my question is, like, the way things are right now, what would prevent I'm just going to use the word physician like yourself, from prescribing, marijuana? Or there's some people that claim that LSD is therapeutic. I mean, where does that end?
For someone like me, I don't relish the thought of 15 to 20 in a federal penitentiary.
Well, no.
That's what would deter it for me. I can't speak to what the other people are doing with substances that we certainly don't recognize as legal on any level in Wyoming. So I'm not qualified to speak to that, other than I just don't think that orange jumpsuits are really the kind of attire that I want to subscribe to.
Where I'm going with that, Dan, is that what separates folks like yourself who have a legitimate business and doing stuff the right way from folks that maybe have a similar office but are prescribing not so legitimate things? I mean, where is that line between what you do and what could be some sort of I don't know, criminal or stuff that's not so legitimate, I guess is what I'm saying. Where's that line at?
Yeah, well, I can only speak for myself and the other practitioners, several practitioners in the state of Wyoming that do use natural substances. We certainly have a code of ethics and conduct that we have to go by. Number one, with our national board certifications. Number one. Number two, we do not practice beyond the scope of our training. Number three, I am very blessed that I have lots of primary care physicians that I can refer clients out to and do it on a regular basis here in Cheyenne and other locations. And they are more qualified to deal with maybe labs or deeper diagnostics, things of that nature. So our focus is really on things that are natural, their lifestyle, they're the things that have been used for 6,000 years of recorded history. We've just gotten better at it, obviously, with science and some other things. But at the end of the day, I think a person's personal ethics and their personal conduct, their credibility, having done something like this in the same building for 25 years, again, I can only speak for myself, speaks volumes to that question, to that answer.
Okay.
Dan, this is Ken Pendergraft. I'm listening to this and you talk about natural products. How do you define natural? Because, we can only make things from things that occurred originally natural. So where's the line? Where does something become not natural?
Synthetic.
A great question. So I'll give you an example, because a lot of the schooling that's behind the naturopathic physician push is subsidized by the pharmaceutical industry. Okay. One of the words that was used that was kind of comical here recently was that we're dealing in wilderness medicine. Well, I will tell you, the pharmaceutical industry is very interested in wilderness medicine as you look into how they've either synthesized or isolated certain chemicals and then reproduce them in a lab so that they could prescribe them millions of times and kind of hold a patent on a piece of nature's pharmacy. So an example of that is digitalis. Okay, digitalis is a drug that found its origins in foxglove, which is an herb. Okay, the herb foxglove, if you eat too much of it, you will sweat, you'll have headaches, you'll vomit, you'll urinate, you'll have diarrhea. And if you continue to eat it, even while all of that is happening, then you'll go into what's called a coma or a death. With digitalis, there's only two safeguards, coma and death. If you get too much, you're going to be put in a coma. There are no safeguards in the synthesized or processed models. And just like there's built into the pharmaceutical or the botanical realm with natural substances, herbs, things like that, nature's pharmacy has built some of those safeguards in. So that's the difference, is that you've taken a piece of the whole and said, hey, this is echinacea or this is vitamin E. But then you look at the label and it says as ascorbic acid. Well, ascorbic acid is a piece of vitamin C. It's not the whole complex vitamin C nutrient. It's a piece of vitamin C. It's not the whole thing. And so when you start getting into those areas and start breaking down or synthesizing or trying to chemically reproduce an active ingredient, now you're getting into the processed nature and removing what the original form of that substance was.
So I want to go back to my mom, the witch doctor, for a minute. You know, some of the I mentioned that some of the things that she uses, some of these essential oils, you know, in their pure form can be pretty toxic. You know, one of them that I use quite a bit for my legs is called heliochrysum. Well, if you don't cut that with like vitamin or with like oil of some kind, it'll burn
Sure.
you. Okay.
Yep.
But it'll also, like, if you're hurting, and it'll take the pain away, no problem. So my question is, you know, talk to me about the purity of the things that you use. You know, we've seen recently, you know, in the last, I don't know, 5 years, where, you know, in states that have legalized marijuana, and I think this is a great example, that they've upped the purity of the THC that they're selling to such a point where, you know, actually, you know, it's really harmful. You know, you've got you go from a plant that may have, and I don't know the percentages, but a small amount of THC all the way up to something that's 90% pure. That seems to be a big problem to me. So in my mind, the same principle would apply with the herbs that you use. So talk to me about the purity and how you tell the difference, how you use them differently.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we have a state and federally compliant lab here in Cheyenne for all of our herbal remedies. All of those herbs have to have a COA, certificate of origin, and they are third-party tested for any additional potential impurities that might exist, contaminants, metals, chemicals, etc. Bacterial counts can't be too high, and so on. So that's at the state level as well as the FDA level to ensure those remedies. And as I mentioned earlier, we really stick to our lane. We're not doing anything with THC or marijuana.
Sure,
I'm just a great example. I agree with you. That's a great example. But we are held to a very high standard where we have to maintain those compliance regulations. We are typically, we are actually inspected at least once a year. And I'm on it. And so
a busy office.
Well, yeah, we're going to crank up here in about 8 minutes. That's okay. You go right ahead. And so that's the difference is obviously we stay in our lane, we use things, and we have other allies in this. Obviously, Standard Process has been a whole food supplement producer for well over 75 years. NutriWest, right here in good old Douglas, Wyoming, has been around for several decades, producing these types of products that we use on a daily basis in a very safe and efficient manner.
Okay. So it sounds to me like already there's a little bit of regulation that already exists. There are some safeguards in place. So just, I know we're short of time, but just bottom line it for me. Any sort of bill that comes out that might increase regulation, are you a hard no, or are you willing to work with the sponsor of that?
You know, I think that the most important thing right now is that the consumer really doesn't know what a naturopath is. You ask 100 people, you might get 2 responses that are close. So the consumers don't know what's on the table. I can assure you the pharmaceutical industry and the lobbyists for the naturopathic physicians really understand the depth and the scope of this type of legislation. And I do know, at least on this particular issue, House Bill 269, I believe that Senator Barlow is forming a study group to consider sitting down and discussing this in more detail sometime in September. I look forward to being invited to that study group and sitting down and going through that. And I do know that more testimony is going to be offered up in October during the interim committee session here in Cheyenne this time. I believe that's a Thursday and Friday, 16th and 17th of October is what the calendar, I believe, says now. I will be there. I encourage other practitioners to also be there. And I'm going to also open up my clinic that Friday evening from 5 to 7, a private invitation to anybody on the committee who would like to come and see what an actual naturopathic clinic is, what we do, what we provide, our intake processes and procedures, the education we use, the safeguards, everything that we've been doing successfully for well over 25 years right here in Cheyenne, to share with them and answer questions and really be an open book and transparent, because it's very clear that on this particular issue, there is more questions than answers. This type of legislation does not solve any problem. There's no problem that this solves, okay? And so I look forward to having that additional dialogue on the study group, possibly in September, and then testimony in October. And again, an invitation to anybody on the committee to come through and visit our office.
Okay, great. Well, I know you got to run, but why don't you tell my audience if they want to get a hold of you, how they do that? How do they find your clinic?
We are located at 1801 Logan Avenue here in Cheyenne, and our office number is 307-634-2464.
All right, Dan, thanks a lot for coming on the show, and keep me updated how things are going.
David, I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.
All right, thanks. Well, there we go. Dr. Dan Young with, on the issue of, do we need to regulate, naturopathic clinics? I think that it's, personally, I don't really know enough about it, but it sounds to me like there's already some safeguards in place that, my question about his, how you regulate the purity of these substances. I kind of liked his answer that that he already has a lab and that everything he has in his clinic has to go through purity tests. So, there's already some sort of regulation. However, I think that I would like to see, some, and I don't know how you do this without creating burdensome regulations, but, I like the idea of saying, okay, this guy over here, he's a legitimate naturopath. This guy over here, we don't know what he does. And I don't know where that line is. But, with my visits to all the numerous doctors that I have to go see, I want a way that I can tell the difference between the doctor and the quack. But I don't know. It sounds like it was a fascinating discussion with Dr. Young.
All I wanted to do was learn how to make crack, and we got that covered.
Yeah, we did that at the beginning of the program. Well, let's go ahead and take our next break, and we'll continue with the program when we come back.
Ever since gold backing was removed from the dollar, the value has dropped significantly over the past few decades. Experts say this is one of the main reasons goods are more expensive and your savings are worth less each year. How would you know how many dollars to save for retirement if the valuation of the dollar changes over time? Would you work all week for that $20 gold piece? Let's look at the valuation of this coin from the 1970s to today. When President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, this coin traded for about $275. Today, it trades for about $14,000. Buying and holding rare coins using only a fraction of your portfolio is our suggested way to save for the future. Call U.S. Coin Capital at 1-800-878-2646 to get your free United States Gold and Silver Buyer's Guide.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Welcome to Lessons in Civility by Morton Buildings. Gentlemen, is your garage completely jam-packed full of all of your unnecessary crap, and your lovely wife has been on your tail, nagging you non-stop to clean it out? It's not because she just wants to incessantly irritate you. Chivalry dictates that you should clear out a space so she can park her car inside and you don't end up sleeping on the couch anymore. To do that, contact Nick and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Not only are they the experts in metal building construction, they're also skilled at keeping you out of the doghouse. One more time. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. This has been Lessons in Civility from Morton Buildings. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics, live on YouTube, Facebook, X, and on Rumble, having more fun than anybody should legally be allowed to have. Welcome back to the program, my friends. If you want to be part of the show, the phone number here in the studio, and I went ahead and opened up the phone lines, but the phone number is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. If you want to talk about my interview with Dr. Dan Young, I think it was, fascinating discussion. I didn't know a lot about what he did, and now we do. So go ahead and give me a call, 307-374-8989. Also, as it relates to interviews, we have a big one coming up on Friday. Former Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, Kate Fox, is going to join the program on Friday's show, and we're going to we'll probably leave the phone lines open for the entire interview. If you have a question for the Chief Justice, we may take a call or two. So anyway, that's going to be on Friday, and make sure that you don't miss it. She doesn't do a lot of interviews, and and I think there's a good reason why our judges don't do a lot of media, though I think there is something to be said for increasing the amount of transparency. There's a lot of questions about how we select judges, and if judges need some sort of protection, I think we probably need to do something, though I don't think that we can provide a security detail for every judge. So there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about with the Chief Justice, and you don't want to miss it. That's Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. Back to the turkey vulture for a minute. Now, when you hear this headline, you may think that the turkey vulture is onto something. But again, remember who it is that's giving you the information. Listen to this headline: Regulate AI for the sake of our jobs, our brains, and our planet. Now, I could go along with the whole jobs thing. I think in the very near future, there's going to be a lot of occupations that are eliminated. But that really doesn't bother me too much, because it wasn't too long ago, I think, that the guy that picked up the caskets in his wagon and delivered them to the cemetery, well, there's no need for him and his wagon anymore. We have automobiles. Similarly, we don't have a lot of stables where people have to, stable their horse when they come into town. Now we do have parking lots, which are a little bit different, but we don't have the need for people to run massive stables anymore. That job has gone away.
Yeah, they had the same problem when whale oil was going out of file, being replaced by electricity.
Yeah, exactly.
Things
right.
happen. What bothers me though, you talk about regulate AI, and from what I'm reading, what are you doing, Dave? I can't do that, Dave.
I'm sorry, Dave. I have to kill you. I've got to get those sound bites for you, though. They're not as exciting as I remember, or as terrifying when you play them. Anyway, so to this article, right? We have to regulate AI for the sake of our jobs, our brains, and our planet. Now, the headline doesn't sound too bad, but wait until you get into it. And I quote, AI companies like ChatGPT and OpenAI are expanding rapidly, and many Americans rely on AI assistants such as Alexa and Siri in their day-to-day lives. For some college students, not relying on AI can feel like a disadvantage. Yeah, like you actually have to do your own work. Critics might be soothed by the idea that AI can be put to good use, such as in data modeling or to better predict our changing climate. Uh-oh, alarm bells are going off. Perhaps this thing isn't necessarily about AI and jobs. Anyway, modeling to better predict climate change, an idea that's generated a lot of enthusiasm. But using AI to tackle climate change is like bombing a country in the name of peace. Well, sometimes you do have to have peace through strength. But I'm getting the distinct impression from just the opening paragraphs of this that perhaps the author's chief concern is not whether or not AI is going to take over the planet and become some sort of Terminator. It happens to do with climate change. And I quote, AI is a driver of climate change, not a solution. According to the United Nations Environment Program, rapidly proliferating AI data centers, quote, use massive amounts of electricity, spurring the emission of planet-warming greenhouse gases, as well as consuming enormous quantities of water and minerals. ChatGPT, the popular AI software, is hardly worth the climate impact. One analyst, Sophie McLean, writing for Earth.org, explains, quote, for a simple conversation of 20 to 50 questions to ChatGPT, the water consumed is equal to a 500 milliliter bottle, spread across billions of users. That's a substantial footprint. AI is spreading so fast that we've hardly had an opportunity to consider its impact. Even the world's most popular search engine, Google, started using AI by default. Each time you do a simple search, Google uses generative AI to offer an AI overview before listing its results. And the article goes on to say that the main problem with AI is that it's a threat to the climate. First, don't ever accept the premise that there actually is a climate crisis. As far as I'm concerned, CO2 is plant food, and we need more of it. One of the state representatives sent me a note this morning saying that, hey, it seems to me that if we had more CO2, we would have more plants. And, after all, what's the largest contributor of CO2 on planet Earth? That would be wildfires. And I don't know that there's any way that we can quantify what that CO2 is. But my point here is that I don't think that the main problem with AI is that it is a threat to the global climate. Rather, I think it's probably that we don't know how we're going to control it in the near future. And I've got a piece like somewhere down in the stack of stuff saying that right now, maybe we are losing control of AI, but I don't know. Hard to say, but I'm pretty sure it's not the climate. Well, let's go ahead and take a call. And let's see, Jerry from Rock Springs. What are you doing today, my friend?
Watching your show.
Awesome. That's what I think everybody should be doing.
Well, yeah, I was one of these natural remedies.
Yes.
This came up about 25, 30 years ago when the pharmaceuticals, people can research it if they want. This was where the attack on these natural remedies came from. The pharmaceutical companies wanted control. They wanted their money. They wanted their union members. They wanted these people to join what I believe, I believe if you look at the statistics, pharmaceuticals probably kill more people than the diseases that the people have. But anyway, this happened about 25, 30 years ago, and it was one. You know, the pharmaceuticals backed off. They attacked vitamins. That was a big deal then. That they went a different approach then, but it's the same approach they're doing now. They just want the control. And it was one. Vitamin companies could go ahead and make their vitamins. And that's where people's personal responsibility comes in. Not all vitamins are the same. You know, amino acids have to be added at certain ages for mine minerals that all you do is basically poop them out anyway. But there are vitamins out there that really do work. And that's where the personal responsibility comes in. You don't just go to any doctor to have your liver removed and another one put in. You research. So you shouldn't take anything that you don't research. You know, you just shouldn't do it. There was a book put out about, I guess it was about 50 years ago. And it was called Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And it was by Dr. Victor Paul Wierwille, I believe his name. And he done studies for the U.S. government. That was another time when doctors were being attacked because doctors actually recommended natural.
Well, yeah, and
you know,
during the interview, I mentioned to Dr. Young that I've got some pretty serious neuropathy, and the choice I had was, well, here you can take some OxyContin or some fentanyl. And by the way, there's a reason why people get addicted to that crap. Or I could have done some research into vitamins and that sort of thing. And I talked to my doctor and said, look, I don't want to do any more opioids. I don't think it's good for me, and it's like makes me drool too much. So do your job, find me some vitamins. Let's try to fix what's going on. And that's that's pretty much what I do now. And so I think that there's a legitimate reason why pharmaceutical companies, legitimate's the wrong word. There's a big reason why pharmaceutical companies would be in favor of regulating naturopathic medicines. Ken?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in there for a second. My wife is not a witch doctor.
My mom is,
but she does.
I love you, Mom.
Yeah, she does some concocting, and every so often she comes up with something. She had some special yogurt that she's made, and anyway, none of it has ever worked for me, been ineffective. And in the back of my mind, there's always Yule Gibbons. Ever eat a pine tree? Some parts are edible. And then he died of stomach cancer. Just wondering.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and like I say, a lot of it is live and learn. But there is information out there that has been suppressed, and like this doctor I was talking about, he'd worked for the government and went around and the world, and researched longevity and stuff, and it was natural minerals. It wasn't mine minerals. That these groups of people that lived, to be over 100 years old and didn't have diseases. And like myself, I take a vitamin that, because I went back to the book, and there's a doctor that was related to this book in his investigation, and I do a vitamin. It's a natural vitamin. It's colloidal vitamin. It's not man-made. It's mined from prehistoric vegetation, and that was my choice.
Sure.
I got off the opioids. I had my back broke at work, and I was broke up. I had like 5 different operations. I got metal plates in my body, but they had me on crap that was not helping me.
Right.
I mean, it was, my relationships were going to hell. My body was going to hell. My attitude was going to hell. I quit going to I quit going to medical doctors in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to just keep operating on me to make me better. Well, I got on this one vitamin, and the neuropathy, they told me I'd lost 80% of the feelings in my left leg and 40% in my right leg. And they said nothing's ever going to help that. Well, I'm walking without a cane now. It's been 3 years.
Yep.
It took a couple of years for the vitamins to help. And plus, you got to exercise and stretch and do things like that. But I don't take anything. I walk without a cane now. I have problems in my feet, and it's very similar to diabetes.
Yeah.
I have sympathy for what you're going through.
Well, it's
because,
like I was saying, Jerry, got with my doctor, and we worked on some other ways to maybe help my legs, and so far it's helped. So anyway, but like you say, it's all personal responsibility, and it's like everything else we talk about on this program. You got to take responsibility for your own crap, and your health is no different. Well, Jerry, I appreciate the call. I got to run, my friend, but have a good afternoon, and God bless the Republic.
Okay, God bless you, and God bless our Republic.
All right, I think Jerry's absolutely right. You got to take responsibility for your own stuff and do your own research. And, it kind of reminded me, my dad is a zoologist, not a witch doctor, but he always talks about one of the foremost experts of mushrooms. Used to be at the University of Wyoming. And this guy had a theory that if you don't know what a mushroom is, and by the way, you shouldn't eat wild mushrooms because for every one that you can eat, there's 4 others that look exactly like it that will probably make you really sick or kill you. Anyway, so this mushroom expert at the University of Wyoming, his theory was, well, if you don't know what it is, take a little bite of it. And if it doesn't make you sick, eat a little bit more. And if it does make you sick, don't eat it again. Well, that mushroom expert got a hold of the wrong mushroom and it killed him.
My stepbrother was an expert on shrooms too.
The magic kind, huh? Well, anyway, if you want to be part of the program, the phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. A lot of the representatives down in Cheyenne and senators, the redcoats, they'll tell you that we really don't have that big a problem with property taxes. That, really, I mean, everything is just fine and we don't really have to worry about it. Other states, they don't really have that problem either, except, of course, in Texas. Now, there's a piece in The Blaze, and it's entitled Property Taxes Are Killing Middle-Class Ownership Nationwide. Now, I want to take you back to, the Middle Ages in Europe. And a lot of countries still functioned, and most countries did, on feudalism. Feudalism was a system where the king owned everything, and you lived on the king's land, and you paid him homage for the privilege to live on his land, and you fought in his wars, and whatever you grew on the king's land, you had to give a portion of it to the king, and you really didn't own anything. So essentially, you were paying taxes to live on somebody else's property. Well, think about this. Now, you buy your house. Hopefully, you buy your house from Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. Shameless little plug there for you, Rebecca. But hopefully, you find a nice house and you're able to buy it. Well, let's say that you're happy and you have a nice house. Well, you also have to pay the government for the privilege of owning your own house. And in many, many cases, the property taxes you have to pay are pretty onerous. Several $1,000s a year. I don't personally own a property. We rent right now, but Agent 29, I'm sure your property tax bills are not insignificant. But just about, a lot of people that I talk to, their taxes are so high that they're way, way more than they would pay for their renting a piece of property.
I just wanted to say that just because you're a renter doesn't mean you don't pay property taxes.
Well, that's true. You do.
You're paying it.
Yeah, they get passed on through your rent for sure. My point, though, is to ask you a question. What is the difference between feudalism and the situation that we're in right now? I mean, we have this, technically, I guess you own your own property, but if you don't pay your taxes, they'll take your property away from you.
They might not come stab you with a sword.
Well, that's true.
Maybe there's a slight difference.
There may be a slight difference there. There may not be any dungeons, though. I mean, if you're homeless because you didn't pay your property taxes, that might be a problem. But here's what the piece says: "Quote: Texans love bragging about no income tax, but property taxes are exploding. Now, tell me if any of this sounds familiar. If we don't cap hikes now, families will pack up and take their American dream elsewhere." Quote, "What started as a local way to fund roads and schools has metastasized into a national scandal, a form of government rent on homes we've already paid for. Unlike sales taxes, which reflect voluntary spending, property taxes punish ownership itself, a direct affront to freedom and a quiet war on the American dream. It's not just a Lone Star State problem. From New Jersey to Illinois, California to Florida, families are being taxed out of their homes. Soaring appraisals and bloated local budgets trap homeowners on an endless treadmill. Pay off your mortgage, and you're still stuck with escalating annual bills. That's not ownership. That's serfdom cloaked in paperwork. Local governments dress up this shakedown. They cite the needs for schools and roads and emergency services. But where's the accountability? Budgets balloon, bureaucracy swell, and taxpayers foot the bill while public trust evaporates. Politicians boast of stable or lowered tax rates, yet the truth is plain. When your appraisal jumps, so does your bill. It's a rigged game of smoke and mirrors. All right, so let me give you an example. Sheridan School District number 2. Last year, they had a budget of $54 million, and then they added a couple of million on top of that. This upcoming fiscal year, the budget is $73 million, roughly a $20 million jump. Now, you can't tell me that the quality education that they're providing is any better. Our test scores are still in the crapper. So why is it that we need to have a $20 million increase in the amount of money going to one of the 3 school districts in Sheridan County? And where does all of that money come from? Property taxes. And so if you want to know why your county commissioners, and by the way, your county commissioners can lower your property taxes today if they wanted to. They can lower the amount of mills that they assess, and they don't even have to go to the state legislature to do it. But with school districts that jack up their budget by $20 million, there's no way the county could lower property taxes right now.
Yeah, as we all know, we've mentioned many times, this all stems to, you mentioned ballooning budgets.
Yeah.
It stems to spending. So you and I went to an event yesterday afternoon, and we saw one of the Sheridan County commissioners there. And he was talking to me about sitting in on a meeting. And the purpose of the meeting was to discuss, I think it's a 5-cent fuel tax.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah. And the purpose of that tax, or the reason why it came up in some people's minds as a good idea, is to make up the deficit that Wyoming Department of Transportation is experiencing. And yeah, there are some issues there. I'm not sure they're as bad as they would like to claim.
How do we know there's a deficit?
Yeah, well, I got the numbers, but it takes forever to go through them, and then by the time you get through them, they're not valid anymore. Anyway, you look at this, and his point to us was how they took immediate exception to hear our taxes being raised, and we're not going to get our share.
Yeah.
We've got to have our share too. They're feeling particularly wounded because property taxes took a little bit of a hit in their mind.
Rightfully so, by the way.
Yeah, and certainly we could go back through all the arguments, and it still is the same. But I got to tell you, there are dents in my tongue from avoiding mentioning that $3 million flower pot.
Well, I was standing right there, and I was waiting for it. I was waiting for it because it was that county commissioner who absolutely voted for it. In fact, all the redcoats on that county commission voted for it. But the fascinating thing is there was no recognition that property taxes in Sheridan County and other counties in the state are just exploding. And that even though we passed legislation to try to, get a handle on it, the county assessors found a way around it. Imagine that. And so, but there was no recognition that, maybe we shouldn't raise taxes. Maybe 5 cents on a gallon of gas is too much. Maybe we shouldn't even be taxing it as much as we are. Nope. He said we have to have our share so we can pay for our roads.
Just two things on that fuel tax real quick. One of them is trucking companies for various reasons are already avoiding Wyoming. That's a bit of an issue. And the other one is who pays that fuel tax? It's not the trucking companies. They pass that on in everything that they haul. So you pay that tax, every dime of it, every time you purchase anything delivered by a truck.
Yeah, companies don't pay
pretty
taxes
much anything
at
exactly.
all. And it's fascinating when you get into this discussion with elected officials, because they automatically say, well, we have to tax companies. Well, companies don't pay taxes. And the reason for this is they pass that on to their customers. So whatever increase in taxes the state legislature or Congress makes, that gets added into the price, and it's you that pays the taxes. It's not companies.
Yeah, taxes on companies are just a sneaky tax.
Yeah. If you talk to some representatives down in Cheyenne, sneaky taxes are okay because you'll never know about it. Jerry Obermuller.
Especially if you call them a fee.
Yeah, if you call him a fee. Oh, that's
Yeah.
Stephen Pappas.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, we're going to go ahead and take our last break. And when we come back, a little bit more about NPR. Senator John Kennedy was on the floor talking about some of their headlines. It's funny stuff, and we're going to talk about it when we come back. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. We all should be very thankful for the talents that we've been given, the gifts that we've been given. And I have to tell you, my friends, I have been blessed beyond measure. Like everything we do here, God is definitely behind it. And I'm just very, very thankful. And frankly, you should be thankful for everything that you've been given too. But let me ask you a question. If a government, say China, owns a television show and they put out their nightly news broadcast, we would call that propaganda. We would say that it is state-sponsored, news speak, that it's really not news. It's just whatever the government wants you to believe. Or perhaps Al Jazeera, not necessarily funded by governments, but definitely funded by terrorist organizations. We would call that propaganda. Or there's North Korea. North Korea has a news station too, but it's completely run by Kim Jong-un's regime. That's also propaganda. So why is it in America, when we have state-funded TV, that we don't call that propaganda. Rather, we call it journalism. From the Daily Wire, ex-NPR CEO, mixing journalism and federal funding is a recipe for disaster. I wonder why. Former NPR CEO Vivian Schiller said in a PMS NBC interview Monday that, quote, I have long believed that mixing journalism and federal funding is just a recipe for disaster. With the shekels come the shackles, my friends, and anytime you take federal money, there are requirements that come along with it. That's why, one of the reasons why we have such a screwed up education system, and it's because we take federal money. And the crazy part about it is in Wyoming, we don't even need the federal money. We could easily cover every dime, every red cent that comes from the federal government. We could easily cover, and it wouldn't even put a dent in our state's finances at all. Yet, we take the money, and with that money comes requirements. And one of the better examples of that is the No Child Left Behind Act. Hey, if you do this, we'll give you money. And we all know how big of a disaster that was. Well, the same holds true for so-called journalism. This comes as the Senate passed Trump's $9 billion rescissions package on Sunday, which is awaiting the president's signature to become law. Now, this was printed 2 days ago, so I'm pretty sure it's already been signed. The bill repeals over $1 billion in federal funding allocated to public media, including broadcast corporations like PBS and NPR. Quote, in many ways, I think this is an opportunity for a reset, Schiller said. I think the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which was a very bureaucratic organization that still is today, doling out all that money, it needs to go away. So let's reset. Let's come up with a new governance structure. Well, if it is indeed public broadcasting, I don't see any reason why we, you and me, need to fund it, or, through our tax dollars anyway. If you like NPR, you're absolutely welcome to pull out your checkbook and cut a check to them yourself. There's no reason why somebody who has more than disdain for NPR, that I should have to pay for it. In fact, Senator John Kennedy agrees with me. Now, he was on the floor of the U.S. Senate, and he was just talking about some of the headlines from NPR. Go ahead and play the video, Ken. This is some funny stuff here. It's John Kennedy, so of course it's funny.
Using your tax dollars.
Oops, wrong one. There we go.
This headline, monuments and teams have changed names. Let me say it again. Monuments and teams, presumably sports teams, have changed names as America reckons with racism. Birds are next. I don't know any birds that are racist. Here's another headline. Eating less beef is a climate solution. Eating less beef is a climate solution. I don't have anything against vegetarians. I'm a semi-vegetarian myself. I eat beef, and cows eat grass. So that makes me a semi-vegetarian.
Me too.
But
my
that's my
food
choice.
Poops on your food.
Not on NPR. Eating less beef is a climate solution. Here's why that's hard for some American men. Here's a final headline. I could go on the rest of the evening. How the Taliban adds to Afghanistan's woes when it comes to climate-fueled disaster. Boy, I can tell you that's on the mind of every person in Afghanistan today.
Okay, hold it right there for a
climate
minute.
change and the Taliban. I can guarantee you.
Okay, so none of the headlines that Senator Kennedy is mentioning are at all factual. Birds are now racist. And I didn't really pay too much attention to when that came up, but there was literally an effort by NPR and other stupid news organizations to say that birds could be racist. Well, these are the headlines and the so-called journalism that you are paying for. It is indoctrination. And considering the folks who were in charge of NPR and who are in charge of the federal government, i.e. Joe Biden or whomever was pulling his strings, I mean, it makes sense that all of these headlines would come out. But it doesn't mean that it's actually journalism, that it's reporting the news, that it's anything factual. Back to the piece, Representative Rosa DeLauro, top Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, told The Hill that rural communities, quote, are frightened to death that they're not going to have access to important information or alerts about weather situations, information that they need to know, education for their kids, because they're not in communities where there are multiple sources of information, end quote. Now, we live in a state that is, I would argue, probably way more rural than just about every other state. There are places, lots of places in Wyoming, where you drive through and you don't have a cell phone signal. There's one right outside of Sheridan. When you're headed up the hill right outside of town towards Buffalo, there's, I don't know, it's like 4 or 5 miles where you're not going to make a phone call. If you go up the mountain, you're not going to make a phone call there, at least, until you get to the top. And so there are many places where you don't even get a cell phone signal. But I don't think that anybody really, I don't know a single person that relies on NPR to find out their critical weather information. I don't know any of them. In fact, anytime there's a critical weather event, a thunderstorm, a tornado watch, whatever, my phone goes absolutely bat crap crazy. When there's an Amber Alert and there's a cell phone around, you can't shut that thing off fast enough. So why is it that we need NPR?
I might appear a little bit unfeeling here, but we didn't have any early systems when the pioneers came out. Okay, life is better now. We shouldn't have to live like the pioneers.
How old were you then?
But in my teens.
Okay.
So
I'm having too much fun with that today.
I was thinking earlier when Dr. Young was on, and we're talking about the idea of, and when Jerry called in, we're talking about the idea of individual responsibility. At some point, you got to take responsibility for yourself and learn how nature works, how the weather works. I don't need the weathermen to tell me what's coming.
Which way the wind blows?
Yeah.
No,
I just look at the tarp on my covered wagon.
Well, when I was working at the uranium mine, which it's kind of southeast of Buffalo, it's way out in the middle of nowhere, and there isn't a high hill anywhere. And you learn pretty fast that if you look towards the mountains and you see a storm coming, you know that it's going to be at that mine in about 20 to 30 minutes, and you better start packing things up. You learned those things. And when you're in Wyoming, like when you're going to have a weather event, you just take personal responsibility for yourself. And, then there are other warning systems on your cell phone. Again, I don't know that many people who don't own a cell phone. In fact, thinking about it, I'm not sure I know anybody that doesn't have a cell phone, unless they're a really little kid and their parents haven't let them have one yet. But anytime there's anything that happens, there's an alert that goes berserk on it. So one, I don't see a need for NPR. Two, it's definitely an outlet for propaganda. So let's watch a little bit more of what Senator Kennedy said. These are more headlines. They're great.
I don't have a problem with these headlines. This is America. If you want to publish articles like this, which no person with a brain above a single-cell organism would call fair and balanced, if you're a news outlet and you want to publish this kind of stuff, that is your right as an American. We have freedom of the press. We have the First Amendment. You're not free in our country if you can't say what you think. You're not free in our country if you can't express yourself. I'm all for this, if that's what these outlets want to do. But I'm not for taking $500 million every single year and giving it to these stations to the exclusion of everybody else so they can do it. And there's more. I could do this.
Oh, looks like I didn't do a very good job in my editing. Here, it's going to continue here in a minute.
And there's more. I could do this all night, but I'm not. Here's some more headlines from NPR. There is no neutral. Nice white people can still be complicit in a racist society.
Everybody's racist. Racist.
That's what your tax dollars paid for. Another one. Ibram X. Kendi says no one is not racist. So what should we do? Another one. How artificial intelligence could perpetuate racism, sexism, and other biases in society. Another, scientists debunk lab accident theory.
So that's probably enough of that. I think
pandemic
that you get the point
emergence.
that, NPR does not produce journalism. There are very few actual journalists that work there. And notice I didn't say all. I said there are very few. I mean, there have been some NPR reports that I don't think are necessarily too bad, but the vast majority of them are pretty terrible. And the folks in Wyoming, there's a piece on the cow pie, I don't know, it was published a day or two ago, about how great NPR is and how they do such a service and all of the wonderful programs. Well, yeah, but what about all the crappy programs that they produce also? Even though it's an NPR station that is broadcast in Wyoming, you still get the same crappy journalism that those headlines that Senator Kennedy was talking about. I mean, the same sort of crap. And, just to say that, well, it's Wyoming PBS. So it's a Wyoming version of crap, I guess is what they're saying. There's no reason that you and I need to pay for it. It is a big corporation, and it's entirely, I mean, it is absolutely possible that they could fund themselves. There's no need for you and I to fund it. I mean, it's just absolutely a crap show. Let's see here. What else we got here? We got about 20 minutes left in the program. Oh, here's one for you, Ken. This ought to get your hackles up. So, from the Federalist, the Pentagon has replaced the Naval Academy leader who oversaw racist affirmative action policies. Now, that's a good thing. I don't think that the military is any place for any of the bullcrap DEI policies that we've seen from the last administration. I mean, it's the military's job is to fight and win wars. I love I guess it's a U.S. Marine sign that, we're not the judge and jury. We're just here to arrange the meeting, something to that effect. That's the point of the U.S. military, is to fight and win wars and be the most lethal fighting force on the face of the planet. Period. End of sentence. That they don't have any other job, and it's certainly not DEI. Well, the Biden administration had a campaign to replace a lot of top-level military officers with people who are just activists. And this is one of them at the Naval Academy. Quote, the leading official who presided over the U.S. Naval Academy's use of racist affirmative action admissions policies is being replaced. According to the Defense Department, Marine Corps Lieutenant General Michael J. Borgschult has been nominated to replace Navy Vice Admiral Yvette Davids as the superintendent of the renowned military school. Davids, who was nominated to her now former position by President Joe Biden, has since been reassigned to the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Operations Plan, Strategy, and Warfighting Development. Now, there's a title I don't think would fit on a business card. If confirmed by the Senate, Borgschult will become the, quote, first Marine to head the academic institution in its 180-year history, according to the left-wing military.com. The Pentagon's move to replace Davids as the Navy school superintendent comes amid the Trump administration's effort to restore meritocracy and lethality to the military. Now, here's where you start to get into who exactly this Davids person was. There is a yearly lecture that is sponsored by the Military Academy, and it is the folks that are invited to speak at this event are nominated by the leaders of the history department at the Naval Academy. During David's tenure as superintendent, she presided over a controversy involving the school's annual Bancroft Lecture. Last year, the Academy invited Ruth Ben, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name, I'm going to say Giat, to a radical leftist who's regularly characterized Trump and other Republicans as authoritarians, to speak at its 2024 lecture. Now, just to give you a flavor of who this Ruth Ben Giat person is, go ahead and play cut number 1 for us, Ken. You'll love this one.
Because we think about authoritarianism as imposing controls on people and silencing people, and it certainly does that. But it also is designed from fascism forward to make people become their worst selves, to give them permission to be as violent and unrestrained as possible.
So she's speaking on a so-called news program called Democracy Now! And it's totally left-wing bullcrap. If you watch the video, it's absolutely anti-Trump. And the whole thing is to say that, and the so-called news broadcast was right around when Trump held his Madison Square Garden event. And so this Ruth Ben Giat person is responding to all of that. And the anchor, so-called anchor, there's a reason why she's not on network news. Definitely not going to be hired by Fox News. But there's a reason why she was on there, because it's all about authoritarianism. Let's go ahead and play the rest of it.
And so deregulation, just as, the Project 2025 wants to deregulate environmental protections and food safety things following what happened during the Trump presidency, there's also a deregulation of inhibitions of morals. And so that you will be not less bothered when the violence starts. You will turn the other cheek, or you will participate in it. And this kind of profanity, at women, the misogyny, anti-Black statements, the calling Latinos garbage. It's not only a tradition of dehumanization that starts with fascism and goes through authoritarian movements up to our day. It's also designed to make people feel that the foot soldiers of MAGA, that there are no restraints, there are no controls, and everything will be accepted as long as it is in the service of targeting the enemy within.
So that's the person that the vice admiral in charge of the Naval Academy invited to speak to all of the cadets at a highly exclusive once-a-year gathering, the Bancroft Lecture. Well, wouldn't you just want to hear her? I mean, come on.
She's decrying the way that Trump speaks, and then turns right around and says, the foot soldiers of MAGA.
Yeah, yeah.
Precisely the same thing the other direction. Blind.
Well, absolutely. And, it's amazing that the people that were in charge of some of our most revered institutions, and let's just be honest, if you get an appointment to any of the military academies, that's a big deal. There are not that many people that get appointed to those academies, whether it's West Point or the Naval Academy or any of them. It's a huge deal. And you go there to learn how to be an officer and to get a good education and not to be indoctrinated. And I find it hard to believe that the majority of the people in our military would put up with garbage like that. I just don't see that happening. Now, do they have to go along with it? Yeah. But here's another aspect of it. So the invited lecturer is hammering on Donald Trump. And they're invited to the Naval Academy, where every single person there is in the United States military, technically, right, Ken? And so who's your boss when you're in the military? Well, that happens to be the President of the United States. And this Vice Admiral Davids invited somebody who was going to trash the President of the United States. I mean, it just tells you everything you need to know about who is in charge of the Naval Academy.
Yeah, I'll tell you how far that goes, and I think I've mentioned this before. I used to have a bumper sticker when Bill Clinton was president. I had a bumper sticker on my vehicle, and it said, "You thought Jimmy Carter sucked." And Sergeant Major made me take it off of my vehicle.
I wonder why.
You can't diss the commander-in-chief.
When I was in college on the debate team, and we'd pretty regularly go to events that the Air Force Academy was at. By the way, they had a fantastic debate team. But our favorite trick was to figure out some way where we had to paint them into a corner that the only way that they could win the debate is to argue against the president. And dirty trick, but it worked, because they really weren't going to argue against their boss. Speaking of presidents, I got one more piece here. And I know that you've heard about the revelations from Tulsi Gabbard, all the documents that she's released about the Russiagate scandal. Well, the Daily Caller has a piece entitled "A Key Detail About Obama's Russiagate Scandal is Flying Under the Radar." And there's a new book out by the guy that is the chief editor of Breitbart. And let's see here if I've got his name. I always forget his name. Anyway, we'll get to that in just a second. Anyway, he's got a new book out, and he's writing about this Russiagate thing. From the Daily Caller, quote, Previously classified documents released Friday suggested that the Obama administration withheld a key intelligence briefing that contradicted allegations of Russian election interference from then President-elect Donald Trump. So just remember the time frame here. So President Trump has been elected. It's after the 2016 election. So even though he hasn't been inaugurated, the president-elect receives daily presidential briefings. So he's got to be up to speed come January 20th. And so everything that that the actual president is briefed on, he gets briefed on. So everybody can be up to speed. Well, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence report stated that, quote, foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks or election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential election, end quote, during the 2016 election. So that was in a presidential daily briefing. The findings, which would have directly contradicted media reports and intelligence leaks alleging Russian interference, were ultimately pulled from the presidential daily briefing just days after Trump's victory, despite being cleared for inclusion, according to files released by the DNI. Following Trump's victory, the presidential daily briefing was drafted by the intelligence community December 7th to examine the potential impact of cyber hacks on the election results. But it was killed by a senior official who cited, quote, new guidance, according to the DNI. The flashpoint of the revelations was when the intelligence community omitted evidence showing that there was no evidence of large-scale foreign tampering. So let me just break this down for you. The version that went to President Trump, that was omitted, because had they included it, it would have absolutely shown that everything that the intelligence community, the media, everything that they were saying about Trump wasn't true. Now, I've got a video soundbite of an interview that Alex Marlowe, that's his name, the editor of Breitbart, he's talking to Charlie Kirk on Charlie Kirk's show on Real America News. Go ahead and play that for me, Ken.
So let me ask you, based on your reporting and in the book Breaking the Law, was there collusion between Fani Willis, Jack Smith, and Alvin Bragg? This was always something that was so suspicious, that they all simultaneously come out with indictments. They all simultaneously kind of come out with effectively an indictment spree. Remember the rushed press conference by Fani Willis?
Yes.
What is that? Tell us, Alex Marlowe.
Right. So I will share with you that there is clear evidence there was collusion from the Joe Biden White House with these various cases. One key example here is that Nathan Wade going to the White House 2 times for a total of, I think it was about 16 hours of meetings at the White House during the middle of this. Nathan Wade was only put on that case because he was Fani Willis's boyfriend, and it was essentially a grift for them to be able to make money to go on exotic vacations. Nathan Wade was a family lawyer. He was a nobody. He would never be on a case like this in a million years, aside from the fact that he was had an opportunity to make easy government cash while he had a powerful girlfriend. And him doing this somehow also got him invited to the White House. There's no scenario that anything that Nathan Wade was talking about in that White House other than how to get Donald Trump. We don't know the details of that meeting, but that's where the investigators need to begin. I don't have subpoena power, Charlie, but I can guarantee you that if I did, we would learn there's coordination, there was a collusion, and that there was direction from the Joe Biden White House. Very apropos this week in the news with the Tulsi Gabbard stuff and Barack Obama. It's very clear that this was coordinated at some level, and because of...
Okay, so the reason I showed you that is that there was collusion, obvious collusion, during the 2016, before the 2016 inauguration, or the 2017 inauguration, rather. And that collusion between the government, news agencies, and the intelligence community continued all the way through the Biden administration. And those lawsuits that Charlie Kirk brought up were absolutely, the White House was involved. And the point is that there is now clear evidence with what Tulsi Gabbard has released that absolutely the government colluded to cook up a story to try to imprison Donald Trump on completely fake charges, that there was no Russiagate, it was a complete hoax, and that everything, including the impeachment, all of it was a bunch of bullcrap. And it continued from 2016 all the way through Biden's administration for roughly 8-9 years. Well, actually more, because right up until the the 2024 election, I mean, they were still trying to put Donald Trump in jail. So the flashpoint of all of these revelations, and back to the Daily Caller piece now, was when the intelligence community omitted evidence showing that there was no evidence of large-scale foreign tampering in the 2016 election. Trump was entitled to read the presidential daily briefing as president-elect, and he would have seen the IC's findings, Taibbi noted in a Monday piece. Those findings demonstrated that Russian and criminal actors did not impact the 2016 election. Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, was reading the presidential daily briefings at that point and told Taibbi that if published, he would have seen it. So all of the evidence showing that Russiagate was a load of crap was removed so that Michael Flynn and Donald Trump would not be able to see it. And thus, they would not be able to act on this whole cooked up Russia hoax thing. And I have heard so many people just say that we have to start seeing people in handcuffs. I mean, this is, if you look at a strict definition of what treason is, I mean, we covered this yesterday on the program. I don't know that you can describe what was done by Obama, Biden, the intelligence community. I don't know that you can describe it in any other way other than treason. And I mean, if there is a crime, I'm not aware of it, but I happen to be one of those people that we have to see some people in handcuffs. I mean, is it going to be Barack Obama? I think it should be. If you can prosecute Donald Trump, you can prosecute Barack Obama.
I remember who paid for the initial papers.
Oh, you mean the Steele dossier?
Yes.
Hillary Clinton.
Yes. And then you watch the committee meetings featuring none other than quote unquote Wyoming's own Liz Cheney. How far does this go?
A long ways.
It's deep.
And if you think about, it's easy for us to say, well, the government acts against its citizens. Well, in this case, they absolutely did. I mean, I don't think that there's any other way that you could that you can interpret it differently. That absolutely the Russiagate hoax was cooked up. It was, pushed through by the FBI. James Comey signed off on FISA warrants based on the Steele dossier. And then it continued all the way through the Biden administration, all the prosecutions of Trump, Fani Willis, Nathan Wade, all of them, Jack Smith. And I mean, this is a conspiracy of monumental proportions. And I think it's one of the most important scandals, biggest scandals in American history.
I want to take a little side trip here if I can.
Okay.
You brought up a soundbite from Senator Kennedy, he's a kick.
I love him.
I want to play a couple of minutes of this one, and we can use that maybe to pave the way for where we're headed on some future story.
All right, hit it.
I'm not blaming my Democratic colleagues because we had to agree to it. But anybody with a brain above a single cell organism knows that a motion to commit has no chance of passing. So basically, we've been standing around for 13 hours. We might as well just been standing around sucking on our teeth. Now, I'd like to ask for order in this chamber. At least we can have that.
There'll be order, please.
Mr. President, in this bill, $1 billion is set aside to be spent by September 30th, 2027 to carry out the Defense Production Act. That's it. That's all there is. Now, I'm not a big fan of government-directed industrialization. Government-directed industrialization is when government, with its superior instincts and infallible judgment, decides to pick winners and losers in the private sector. This business gets some money, but you, Ms. Businesswoman, you can't have the money. I'm against that for two.
I'll stop it at that point, but there's more. But we hear about all these things. Well, that's not happening in Wyoming. And
right.
So we were just talking about NPR and defunding them. Wyoming Cultural Affairs Department gave $35,000 to NPR here in the state so that they could finish a project they were working on.
$35,000. It doesn't. I mean, in government terms, that's not a lot, but $35,000 is a lot of money to me.
But it's right on the heels of we just said we don't want government doing this.
Exactly. Well, anytime government gets involved, you're picking winners and losers, and we always end up on the short end of the stick, as far as I'm concerned. Well, that'll do it for today's installment of the program. Don't forget about today's podcast. Go ahead and check it out. It ought to be released a little bit after we're done with today's show, probably about 11:30-ish, I would think. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. We'll see you tomorrow, my friends.